right. Well, welcome everybody. It's our first inaugural episode. My name is Quentin Scott.
I'm
I
Matt Layton.
co-host, co-host Matt Layton. We've been talking about this for probably years, honestly, and then just decided to pull the trigger. And so, welcome to Two Dudes Views. We're going to talk a lot about politics, probably a little bit about sports, and then just random life stuff that falls in place. A little bit about me. I am a senior business intelligence analyst at Legal Shield. I've been there for 12 years, get to do a lot of cool stuff. I am actually also a elected official, so I'm on the Loud School Board. So I ran a campaign against others. I have lost two campaigns, and I have won others, and then drawn non-opponents. And so know a little bit about small politics, and then I will let Matt explain who he is.
Sure. And I'll just add a little bit to that. Quentin talked about politics, and we do live in the state of Oklahoma. So we'll probably have a focus on, local and state politics, at least issues that are interesting to us, right? And then kind of expand out on the national level. And of course, we love football, especially college football. Mr. Scott is unfortunately a Oklahoma State Cowboys fan, and I'm an Oklahoma Sooner. So, in view of no Bedlam football game this year, we do certainly plan to have Bedlam here between us occasionally and often. But anyway, my name's Matt Layton. Actually, both Quentin and I are data analysts during the day for a privately held corporation, and we also love to do this in other aspects of our life. Quentin mentioned he's currently an elected official. I've been in politics before. Then I decided I needed to make some money, right? Because the offices I was running for and holding was, I got a whole lot of civic pride, but none of them came with a paycheck. So I kind of left that behind. I was elected to the local city council in Ada, Oklahoma, I think 2010, 2012, served the term there and decided that was great fun and I loved it, but I probably loved campaigning more than I did, office holding. So shortly after when my first term was over, I decided, yep, that was fun, but that may be enough for now. Went back kind of into the corporate world where today I'm a senior vice president of data analytics and business insights. And that's kind of the way at least I'm coming at this. And I think Quentin is too. How do we think about, local, state, national politics, business, sports from kind of that analytical mindset, right? Because I always say, I think all the answers are in the data, right? One, do you have enough of it? And two, is it good enough in order to, do the analysis and provide some of those answers? So that's what I think, our kind of goal here is. One, we like to talk about this stuff. We talk about this daily. So, why not record it and see if other folks find it as interesting as we do? But two, also, how do we take our views on issues and then look at them through the lens of the actual data, right? Regardless of, what our partisan leanings may be or how we feel about an issue, can we take that completely away and just let the data do the talking? And then we can lay on, our thoughts and feelings, and that sucks, I don't care about the data. We can talk about that afterwards. But we have a saying, the facts don't care about your feelings. And that's kind of the way I think we're at least going to start here, right? What can we glean from the data from any or all issues, again, local, state, national, and then from that analysis from the actual data, then we can begin laying over the top our views. All right, well, that's nice that now I know that I'm informed. Now what do I think about it, right? Do I agree with that or do I disagree? Or, I'm a minority here, right? The data's not in my direction. That's okay. I'm going to take the opposite view and I'm going to go out and evangelize my point of view or my side of the issue. And I'm going to, I may come back in 4 years and my issue is going to be leading, right? But I kind of went on a little tangent there. But I think that's what we want to talk about here. But anyway, I do data analytics during the day. Love politics. Dabbled in that locally. Love any type of business. I've consulted with business and technology startups, and I also love the outdoors and the country. And I'm a pretend rancher on the weekends. Or I'd have a few head of cattle and horses that I always tease. They talked about George W. Bush going to Crawford and cutting brush. What the heck's he doing out there? You can get a lot of thinking done if you're out in the woods all by yourself, just doing chores, manual labor. I come up with a lot of my best ideas out there. So anyway, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, and Matt really kind of hit the nail on the head. We want to talk about more local, kind of even municipal into state level, especially for us in Oklahoma. The national level, we noticed it in the recent election. The economy was a huge proponent for kind of how the election went, a lot of coverage. They were polling people. The data said the economy was the number one concern for people. Ironically enough, people will vote in the presidential election for the economy, but not in a local election for your state representatives and your state senators and your governors who are actually dictating your state taxes. They have no control over federal taxes, but when you actually look at a line item on a receipt, you have about seven different taxes, and about 4 to 6 of those come from your state alone. Federal is usually one tax, and then you have county, city, state, and so those elected officials really affect your bottom dollar and what you're paying at the store. Here in Oklahoma, we recently had a grocery bill go into effect where we will not have no taxes on actual produce. And so that was a big one for the people in the state of Oklahoma. But what kind of Matt and I want to do is really give people the insights into, and we'll be talking mainly about Oklahoma, but can branch out into other states. And if there's anyone out there that's in another state that's kind of like us, that wants to join us or be a guest speaker, reach out to us. We'd love to hear about other state issues, but kind of why it's important to vote for your county commissioners, your mayors, your city council members, your school board members, little elections like that. We used both of us worked for a company who had a founder that said politics is I'm going to butcher this quote by Mr. Jones, however, but politics is I think an active sport or something. You can't be a participant. Matt, you may
Politics
remember.
isn't a spectator sport.
Yeah, you've got to get involved. You got to get out and vote. It's actually, a freedom we have that we get to execute more than once every 4 years. It's really only talked about every 4 years, but we really want to talk about municipalities, counties, state elections, things like that. And one thing Matt didn't mention, and he probably humbly or maybe intentionally, is he actually writes a stress law index that talks about how the law, how we see where we work, the law being affected, and is the stress of our economy, of our culture, society affects everything we do. And it really actually affects the outcome of elections as well. Um, so we look at kind of everything in life and then look at politics as to say we don't really care red, blue, yellow, white, doesn't matter. What are the facts of who can actually do what and what's going on and what is the actual problem that needs to be solved for the people?
Yeah, and when I spent my time on the city council, right, one of the biggest things I focused on was we can agree, adults can agree to disagree, right? So I'm not pushing my view on you, don't push your view on me, but we can discuss the issues, right? And it's okay if we don't agree. And it's okay if you're completely opposed to what my point of view is, right? But if we can sit here and have a civil conversation and educate ourselves, that's really what we're talking about here in terms of politics and voting. Quentin hit it right. Your local government probably has much more impact on you than anything that happens at the state level. Do you believe you're educated enough when you walk into the ballot booth and you're marking the box, right? Or was your granddaddy Republican and your daddy was, and by God, you are too. You don't even know anyone who's running, but you're going to check that straight party voting box, right? Okay, it's your right. You get to vote, but what did you just vote for? Do you have any idea of the views and the beliefs of the folks that you just voted for? That's all we're talking about here is understand what's happening around you, make an informed decision, and then you've taken some empowerment over what happens to you, right? Because honestly, if you don't trust or believe your local, state, or national government, did you vote for those folks, right? When you went to did you even vote in the last election, right? And if you did, do you know what the beliefs are of the people you were voting for? That's what we're going to like to discuss here. And you know what? We can certainly get into politicians are liable to tell you anything you want to hear so that you can vote for them, right? So we're not saying it's easy to go out to, you know, Quentin Scott says he's on this local school board. It's easy to go out to Quentin Scott's website, likely, and see his, platform of policies, but is that how he votes, right? Or is that just what he thinks his folks want to hear? There's probably a little bit of truth and not truth there, right? So how do you weave through kind of that political speak to really understand how a person is going to act and behave once they do become elected?
Yeah, and Matt mentioned a topic that we will address in the upcoming episode is straight party voting. We both have um, very deep opinions about straight party voting. We both align on them. We don't align with some people, which of course those who it benefits don't agree with our opinions, and those who it doesn't benefit they agree. But also gerrymandering, you need to understand what that is. It's when your elected officials rezone the voting zones to better encompass their uh, what they would think would be their winning zones and or fish or sites. And so those are terms you kind of hear thrown out, and even sometimes the state of Oklahoma, we vote on, we approve, we allow. You'll hear politicians say, especially in the state of Oklahoma, we're going to go and we're going to redo the voting zones. Well, a few years ago, I hope Matt doesn't mind sharing this. We were talking about the Senate House, and Matt's from Lindsay, and he talked about he could run in our district for Senate House, and Lindsay was part of it. And then we looked and realized they had gerrymandered Lindsay out because it was so far away from Ada, which
Sure,
is
because
our
so yeah,
county capital.
grew up in Lindsay, Oklahoma, lived there through high school, moved to Ada, Oklahoma, went to college, graduated at East Central University, and that's really where I was also elected to the city council in Ada, Oklahoma. And at one point there was a part of me, and still kind of is looking for, where would, and again, this is why districts get gerrymandered. So I'm looking for where's that best place that I could run where all of my people are, everyone that knows and likes me. And again, I don't know the district number right off. I think Quentin just mentioned it, but that district stretched, from kind of Ada, Oklahoma on the east, all the way to Lindsay, Oklahoma on the west. And I've lived in that whole expanse of territory my entire life, right? My parents have lived there their entire life, and my grandparents lived in those areas their entire life. So I'm like, yes, sir, this is it. I don't know when it happened, but at some point that western edge of that district got chopped off, right? So Lindsay, Oklahoma was no longer in it. And I have no doubt that benefited someone who was either currently in the legislature or was looking to flip that district colors, right? Whether it was blue, they wanted it red, or if it was red, they wanted it blue. We kind of know who runs the Oklahoma, state government. So most likely that was done to create a district that would be more favorable to a Republican victory.
Yeah. And so those are kind of some of the topics we'll talk about. We'll also kind of delve into state questions as well, of how sometimes you need to really understand the state question and what all is written into that legislation, because legislators are intelligent and they know how to write things into state questions that 5 or 10 years later we're saying, how did that become state law? And they're like, well, you voted yes. And so, well, case in point, our state lottery. You even heard a few years ago, if you're old enough, you remember we voted for state lottery. Funds were supposed to go to education. Governor Keating, former governor of Oklahoma, even came out and said, I didn't realize what all we had legislated, and it is not going to the right places. And so he actually had called for the Oklahoma people to recall the lottery vote and to restructure that, which it failed, which is part of why politics are so important, is to know what you're voting, know who you're voting for, because recall elections rarely happen because the amount of people you have to have for the recall. And then it's just an arduous process to pull someone out of office once they're already in office. And most people are like, I will just wait 4 or 6 years so we can vote them out. And then, do you even know the term limits of your county officials, your city officials, your representatives, and your Senate House representatives? So those are things based. Sometimes it's basic eighth grade. What would you call it? Government class, yeah,
Government and civics.
civics class.
Most of us were probably sleeping through that one, or the football coach was teaching it, right?
Yeah, I get
Although,
lucky. I have an eighth grader or a seventh grader right now, so she's got a great civics teacher. So I'm getting some of that again. But so really, that's what this kind of episode was, just to kind of introduce ourselves, just kind of get out of here, tell you people what we'll be talking about. I think the plan right now is we're going to try to put out at least one episode a month because we are busy. We're both have kids. We both have full-time jobs, and our jobs are demanding because we work for a company that is really producing and doing things and doing cool things. So we get to do cool things all the time. And so this is a hobby of ours. But one question Matt and I talked about before was that we wanted to answer was what, let me see if I remember what I wrote down. Matt may remember.
nope, I'm going
If
to let
not,
you go. And I was just going to, because you were talking about a couple of future things you would like to talk about, that I'm extremely interested in hearing your thoughts on our I don't I just blanked on what the position was called, the state superintendent of education for Oklahoma, and
yeah.
his recent appearance on, was it CNN or MSNBC?
Yep.
that, that
And
that one's gonna be interesting to talk about.
And those are such important elected positions. I think so often people think state governments are run like the federal government, where the governor selects a cabinet, and that's not true for the state of Oklahoma. Our lieutenant governors voted on, our state superintendent, almost every elected official or almost every official is elected. Even our attorney general is elected. And so we are a very election based state. So the governor really gets a team that is elected to work with. And as we've seen recently, they don't like each other most of the time, or they do until someone says something stupid and then they put distance between themselves, which is only harms the people of Oklahoma.
Or someone, I don't want to get myself in trouble on the first episode here, but, or someone may be more interested in their future political career than, running the office that they were elected for, right? So, yeah.
Which definitely happens in the second term of a gubernatorial uh, candidate.
Oh, you
So
know what? There's probably positives and negatives to term limits, right? And someone who doesn't have another election coming up. So it's time to get some stuff done, right? But that could also be scary. Is what have they been holding in their pocket all this time, right? Is it good, right? Is it things like, if I would have if I would have got this done, it would have been great for the state, but I may have turned off enough voters to have lost the election, right? Or is it,
yeah.
I got some crazy stuff. I can't even think of what it would be right off the top of my head, but we're going to ram this through because, again, I don't have an election. So double-edged
Yeah.
double-edged sword there to term limits.
Yep. So I found the question. And so the question I posed to Matt earlier, and I'll let him answer it, and then I'll kind of come with my answer. We'll probably have about the same answer, but is what is the first thing someone should do to educate themselves about politics?
And I'll just kind of circle back to, I think, things that I've been talking about all along so far, right? Is just educate yourself. This is your life. You're, electing, you're choosing people to represent your interests in the choices that they make. Just know who it is you're voting for, right? Know what they stand for, know what they're telling you now, right? But also actions speak louder than words, right? As you're knowing what they're telling you, know what they've done before, right? How do
Yeah.
they run their life? How do they run their business? How do they how do they act out in public if you've happened to run into them? What are some things they've done in the past? Because most likely you can get a great read on a person based upon what they've said and done in the past, right? So just I would just say again, it doesn't matter what political affiliation you are, liberal, conservative, libertarian, whatever. Just know who it is you're voting for and what they most likely, how most likely they're going to act going into the future. Just know knowledge. It's certainly cliche, but knowledge is power, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think my answer would be first off, find out how to register to vote, get registered. Doesn't matter what party. I don't really care. Because in the state of Oklahoma, you can carpet bag across each line and into the middle as much as you want. As long as it's not, 6 months before an election, you
Yep,
can.
it is. And you know what? Honestly, to that point, and I don't mean to jump into your answer, but you know, I've changed my political affiliations many times over my life. So again, I talked about it earlier. My family, grandpa, grandparents, Southern Democrats, right? And that's all I knew. So that's what I was, right? As I, aged and got older and learned this and that. What does Matt like? What does Matt believe? I kind of tended Republican, right? I changed to Republican. Now, if you ask me, I'm probably libertarian, right? The best government is one that I don't know is there, can't see, and I don't feel it affecting me. So, again,
Yeah. And to add to Matt's point, I registered Republican, have been Republican since I think I once changed to Libertarian and then realized that's going to affect me when I run for office. So I'm back to Republican. Again, know your state. If you're going to be, oh, another topic we'll probably talk about is if you want to run for office, what to look for, what to think about, things like that. We've both done that. But switch back to Republican because Oklahoma is generally a Republican state. As you saw in the last election, not a single county went to a Democrat. All 77 went to Republican. But I tend to lean more towards a small federal government, strong state government. I don't really like the federal government telling us really what to do in the state of Oklahoma. But those are just our personal opinions. And even Matt and I disagree on some stuff. But again, we're grown adults that can have conversations and then still remain friends afterwards. But to add to what I was saying, after you get registered to vote, find out who your representatives are. Like Matt said, if you come across your legislator, ours lives in Ada. He's one of our representatives lives in Ada, and you can see him every day at one of our local gas stations, even before he goes to the Capitol and when he's traveling. Um, and just introduce yourself to him. Get some time, go to events that they're at, talk to them, talk to people about them, especially in campaign season, talk to their opponents, talk to them, do some due diligence and really figure out who you're voting for and what you're voting for. And also, too, if you really want to do some research, find out who's investing in them and who is behind them, because sometimes that may be who they're casting votes for as well. So,
yeah, because we talked about that briefly before, right? That's kind of that actions speak louder than words, right? I may have the best intentions and I may have the platform and the people voting for me love it and they're totally bought in, right? But if it comes down to election time and I don't have enough election cash in the bank, right, and I draw an opponent who's flush with money, I may be tempted to kind of move some of those policies and positions around depending on who's writing the check. So Quentin's spot on, right? One, what do they say? What do they do? And really, who's who's funding their political operations?
Yeah. So we'll kind of end this one early. We're not going to guarantee everyone's going to be 20 minutes. We hope to stay between 30 and 40 minutes so we don't bore you guys. We're political nerds, we're analyst nerds. Again, we're football nerds. We've been talking all week about Belichick going to UNC and then all the transfer portal. If you want to get us on a soapbox, ask us about the transfer portal. But put in comments kind of your thoughts, even some things you'd like for us to talk about. Again, we're going to be Oklahoma specific because that's the political system we both know and have run in. But if you know different states or you want to hear about different states and know somebody, we'd love to talk to them. We're not afraid to have guests. We're not afraid to reach out to people. So we're just looking to have fun. We've been wanting to do this for a while. So this is us just getting out there and sharing two dudes' views. So
Two dudes' views, yes, sir.